open that page, I'll search for my fix, find what I need in the deep dark abyss.
Hello and welcome to another AI Skeptics podcast. Today we have the pleasure of having Sam with us. Sam, will you introduce yourself quickly?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam Tyner Monroe. I am a consultant, and I co-lead this cool group at a hybrid law firm / consulting firm called the AI Consulting and Testing Group, which I co-lead with a partner in the law firm. I'm not a lawyer. I've got a PhD in statistics, and we're really focused on helping orgs assess, govern, and test and deploy AI responsibly. And so my work sits really at this intersection of technology, risk, governance, public policy, and, been sort of sitting at this intersection of data science, policy, and the law for nearly a decade now, starting with some research I did as a grad student and postdoc researcher in forensic science, and where I co-authored materials for judges and attorneys on assessing probability and statistics-based methods in the courtroom. And then I was a policy fellow at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And then I became a data scientist in a law firm working on all sorts of different data problems, everything from, large data analysis for a case with, 10,000 plaintiffs to helping make patent filing more efficient, and then working directly with clients to test their AI systems, which really has influenced me the most and is most of what I do today.
Wow. Okay. That was a really comprehensive introduction.
Credentials to come on the Skeptics. I will just say we're so glad to have you on, Sam. And you personally were part of my journey to becoming an AI skeptic. We were part of a reading group, like going back a couple of years now, of reading what at the time was cutting edge research evaluations, especially into safety, fairness, bias of these like emerging AI technologies. So reading those papers with you and discussing them was a real like highlight and led us in many ways to this podcast today. So thanks for being on The Skeptics with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And you guys have been so amazing in my journey to AI skepticism as well.
Well, yes. And it is actually really like a family reunion over here. We're really glad to have you. I have an extra big glass of wine through no fault of my own. I just want to throw that out.
The bag's full.
It's just what I got to do sometimes, people, to keep my refrigerator clean. You know what I'm saying? So today we have like an organic, like homegrown AI topic, which I absolutely love. But it is like unbelievably nerdy and wonky, I would say. So I need a little primer on this because I'm not a lawyer. So maybe we're going to just ask Tom. I don't know. Tom, is it okay with you? Can you tell us like, what is pro tem? What does that mean? That sounds Latin.
Pro se.
Oh, so I got it wrong. Pro se. I'm just exhibiting. I'm standing naked before you all. What is pro se, Tom?
Pro se means a party to litigation is representing themselves in court. They are not represented by lawyers. And it is more common than you would think. I was reading some statistics, like in domestic cases, it's very common for one party to be pro se to family matters and whatever. And courts are not, opposed to the notion, or they're accustomed to it in certain areas, particularly state court, lower level matters. Small claims court is entirely pro se. You're not supposed to bring lawyers to small claims court. At least in New York. I can't speak for other places. So that's what it is. Also, a big part of pro se plaintiff litigation is civil rights claims brought by prisoners. They're trying to change their conditions or overturn or whatever, and they use the prison law libraries. Big part of historic pro se litigation.
I imagine like the first category includes things like custody battles and like domestic violence, that kind of thing, family stuff.
Yeah. One thing I was reading said something like half of divorce cases, one party, usually the defendant, is pro se. So, depending on the location and the court conventions and whatever, it's it can be very common.
Do people go pro se just because they can't afford lawyer? That's the obvious thing that occurs to me, but maybe there are other reasons.
Yeah. In criminal matters, there's almost always a mechanism for a lawyer to be assigned to somebody if they can't afford one. Legal Aid Society in New York and other organizations that provide defendants lawyers so they don't have to go unrepresented when they're being prosecuted. But in civil matters, that doesn't exist. So, particularly if somebody's being sued and they don't have any money, they have no choice but to represent themselves. And while you may think of judges as hard asses, the judges that are in those types of courts, those type of situations, are actually pretty used to dealing with it and pretty, understanding. They know how to navigate the process. I guess
All
I
right.
should
Well,
say.
that's a good beginning spot to start with. Now comes Sam. Sam, tell us what's been going on in your home life.
Yeah. So in my personal life, I have encountered recently some pro se litigants, and I'm not going to go into any detail because of legal reasons. But essentially, what it is somebody came to a friend of mine and gave them a lawsuit and said, "Hey, I'm suing you." And it was, this 20-page document of all of these accusations, and it was written in, legalese, so to speak. And my friend came to me knowing that I work at a law firm. My husband's a lawyer. So, and they have no experience with the court system or anything like that. And so coming to me and saying, "Can you look at this? Like, what's going on here? Like, what does this mean? What do I need to do?" All of that sort of stuff. And then, so I'm looking at it with my husband, and he is looking at it. It's like, this is nothing. Like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, look at these M dashes all over the place, right? Like, this was
Sid,
clearly
before you go
written by
into
some
the
sort of AI
M-dashes,
thing.
Yeah, no, that's the punchline. But I need to know a little bit more about what the complaint actually was.
Okay, so it was about a conspiracy to commit a crime against somebody. This friend had been in cahoots with their friends to commit a crime against somebody.
So was it a conspiracy about a conspiracy to commit a crime? Is that the idea?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So wait, like somebody, I'm just I want to dumb this down. Somebody wakes up one morning at 3 a.m. and is like, "I'm really mad at so and so, and I'm going to accuse them of conspiring with so and just to hurt me, and I'm going to get
to harass me, to make my life difficult, all of these things, right?
And I have flimsy evidence, but if I soup it up with some ChatGPT, then this is going to look really amazing on a legal brief.
Yeah. And I can make it sound exactly like it's coming from a lawyer, right? To somebody who has no experience with lawyers. I can make it seem like this is a really big threat to this person and get them to, go to court or, give me money, or, I think that the person was seeking financial, recompense for this alleged conspiracy.
So that was the punchline at the end of the accusation was all this stuff, and therefore I have to get paid some amount of money.
Yeah.
Got it.
It reminds me of Star Trek. I don't know if you guys became Trekkies like I did back in the 90s when The Next Generation came out, but the word on the street was that they'd write these scripts and then they'd say, insert technobabble. They'd have literally spaces for, Geordie LaForge to be the problem is the extra something converter pylon is, blah, blah, blah. And they just have realistic sounding technobabble. And this is the same thing, but it's legalese that ChatGPT is supplying.
Yeah, exactly.
I have one more question on the background on this story. Did the threatening legalese letter go just to your friend, or did it go to a court, and your friend got a copy also?
Yeah, it
What can you
hasn't
not
gone to
say?
a court, which is the big issue, right? Because that's when it becomes a real threat. And please, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding is that if it's not filed, there's not really much to do.
Yeah. It's a form of what? Extortion. I'm going to file this lawsuit. It doesn't always, it's actually not,
Intimidation.
it's not always technically lawsuit, but I'm going to file a lawsuit. You're going to be in big trouble unless you do
Exactly.
something is, kind of extorty.
Yeah. And so this person is sending these legal sounding documents to all of these people involved in this alleged conspiracy.
And they've actually filed a bunch of things too, right? Separate to this.
So we did, yes, my husband did do some research and found that this person has filed other things in other matters, in other states, with all sorts of, suing people for X, Y, and Z, and yeah, just all over the place, clearly representing themselves with a ton of deficient filings.
I mean, just going back to the original harassment and extortion effort, it strikes me that you could just do this like 100 times to 100 different people, even with the same fake claim, and some people would just pay you off.
Yeah, well, it's like a scammer, right?
It's a phishing scam. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that is troubling. That's very troubling. But we're going to move on to our second topic, which is how big a deal is this? And I know, Tom, you've done a little bit of research on this.
Yeah. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that the courts system, the civil court system, is being flooded with pro se plaintiffs, bringing new cases, and for a variety of reasons. That's actually the data that's compiled typically excludes prisoner filings because that's a huge chunk of the cases that are out there. But even with that, it's like a 50% increase since ChatGPT 2 or 3 or whatever was introduced in the number of filings at the federal level. There's a white paper out that shows those statistics.
Tom, I eyeballed it at a doubling. Like it was a doubling in the last year, and I bet you it's bigger by this time.
And it's probably just starting because they're starting to panic about it in news articles and social media and so forth about the volume of pro se litigation brought by plaintiffs. So again, distinguishing it from the other types of pro se that we talked about. These are cases initiated. We don't know how many of that is AI, but the paper did try to estimate something like a third. It's probably more than that.
It's really also was striking to me, just eyeballing those graphs, that it seemed very, very flat until the AI thing. So until the introduction of AI chatbots.
Right.
So it's like,
and
the notion that there really is a resting level of pro se plaintiffs, and what we're seeing now is like some blip on top of a resting amount. Like it made me think of the idea excess pro se plaintiffs is kind of a knowable quantity.
And I would just note that thing that we're talking about, that white paper, is federal courts. Generally, there's a higher burden to filing in federal courts. There's fewer types of claims that you could bring in those situations. So from what I gather, though it hasn't been statistically compiled yet, at state courts, it's even worse. It's dramatic. And the courts don't have more staff. They don't have more judges. They don't have funding to deal with this. And so they're swamped. They're overwhelmed by the number of cases and are trying to figure out what to do about it.
I'm just feeling for the judges here because, like, presumably they actually have to read these things.
Yes, they have to read these, and they're not so happy about junk filings. And there are quotes like, "It's not our job to figure out what your issue is. That's the lawsuit's job. You're supposed to say that, on the first page. It's not, we're not supposed to read 200 pages to figure out what the case is."
What is the literal expectation that, like, this is my naive question, not being a lawyer and knowing about this. If I composed one of these things, it's a complaint or whatever, and then I put a judge's name at the top and I send it by mail to the courtroom. Like, is a judge supposed to actually read that with their eyes? A person?
But,
Is that the promise
person.
that we make in America for justice?
The way litigation is oppositional. So there's a judge with clerks obviously involved, but the two parties are supposed to sort out a lot of the issues. So if somebody initiates a complaint against somebody else, it's really the other person, the person being sued's job to make the argument that it's a junk case. Nonetheless, it still goes into the court docket and still has to be dealt with administratively. So the opposition might say, this is nonsense, whatever the complaint is, and it therefore should be dismissed for these reasons. At that point, there's something for the judge to engage on. They don't necessarily have to read a complaint. The complaint might go unopposed, for instance.
And the opposition could come in and and represent themselves, or they could get a lawyer and incur all those costs.
Right.
What is your friend
Yeah,
doing?
but like with all these junk complaints coming out now, like the calculus for a person, your friends who received this accusation, which let's just assume is totally baseless and pointless. It's like, if they now have to decide, should I hire a lawyer to like fight this thing off, or do I not need one? It's like, there's nothing in it. So why waste your money on a lawyer? Like, but then from what you said, Tom, a lawyer would be the one to write the very careful and succinct, like, this is why this is baseless. So the judge can just efficiently throw it out. But now it doesn't make sense for your friend to hire that lawyer. So now the judge is stuck with, with more to read, and it's junk.
Sam, what is your
this
friend
reminds me-
actually doing?
So right now she's sort of sitting back, biding her time, waiting for it to kind of get to that stage of actually going in front of a judge. But, she's, consulted her own lawyer, I think, and then those, could be $400 an hour, right? And some of the low side of things, right? And, so she's doing that and just sort of being cautious and watching and making sure, nothing gets filed in court. Cause then if it is, then at that point she would receive formal notice as I understand it. And so she's sort of waiting for that sort of like, for it to become quote unquote real.
Yeah, she'd have to be served papers. Otherwise, and you all know from TV and movies, what that is. Are you so-and-so? You've been served. But unless you get that, there's no case. Anyhow, this reminds me of something that happened in New York City. My wife had a retail store, and it became a big issue for people with retail stores in old buildings. There was a guy going around and suing them for not having sufficient access for disabled people to enter their store, which, my wife's store had like a negative 5% margin, and they didn't also control the substance of the building to create access, particularly effective in like landmark buildings or whatever. And this guy was just going around visiting the store and then filing suits all over the place. And the threat was basically, I'm going to sue you, and there's penalty damages, and it's going to be $200,000 or whatever, or you can pay me $20,000 to go away. And
Wow.
that guy eventually died. But there were, concerns among some levels of government about doing something about that, because it really wasn't the store owner's ability to fix it. But, those things happen. Somebody figures out a scheme and figures out a way to make money for it.
I'll say
Slip and
that
fall cases.
my mom like briefly owned a motel and had that exact thing happen to her.
Oh,
About
really?
Access.
Like an ADA
I had
targeting.
less sympathy
Yeah.
for her. I was just like, well, why don't you just comply with all the rules? I mean, come on.
She owned the building, so that is
One of the
different.
reasons she should not have been in the motel room. One of the many, many fucking reasons. Okay, we're just going to throw that out there. Okay, so this is a mess. I think we've established it's a complete mess. The third topic for today is what should we do about it? Or what could be done about it? What is the future of pro se litigants? Like, what is it going to look like, and what should it look like?
Sam?
A question we can totally answer right now, right?
Yeah.
You guys done with it? Let's not
Especially
beat it out, guys.
with only one lawyer in the room.
One thing we did talk about was the notion of access to justice, and that's what pro se litigation provides. People who can't afford attorneys are still allowed to bring cases, and are not kicked out automatically. And this, I'm sure 20 years ago there were people saying Google was a problem with pro se litigants. And I would suggest that most of these pro se litigants would be better off using Google than using ChatGPT. But, if the increase in cases being filed means that more people are being able to do something about the harms that they suffer, then, that's an issue that has to be considered. If more people are suing landlords for violating their housing rights or whatever, is that something we want to restrict? And so the courts are struggling with that. On the other hand, they're getting junk filings and fake citations and fake laws, and that's an issue. So they have in New York, there have been pro se plaintiffs who have been fined and scolded and kicked out of court and so forth for those things, just like real lawyers. And there's talk of having them basically swear to the accuracy of the information the way lawyers are supposed to do. Of course, lawyers do that and still file fake filings, but nonetheless.
One thing occurs to me, it's just like what you're saying, it seems pretty unlikely that one person will have legitimate claims as a pro se plaintiff in like 50 cases at once. Like there's a form of scam here that we're talking about that is just like, that's visible just based on the volume. This person, Sam, that you're talking about, you're like, oh, they're pro se plaintiff in many matters in different states. Tom, the person you talked about who's, getting the disability thing, that's like, they're doing the same thing many times. So you could just see based on looking, how many cases is this person pro se plaintiff in the last 6 months? If it's more than one, it's like, put them in a special suspicious zone and make sure that a person reads over their stuff and throws it out quickly. Like, is that part of the future of dealing with this issue?
Smart. On the other hand, if you're like a prisoner and you think you have like 5 different ways of saying I shouldn't be here in prison, I'd want you to be able to file all 5.
Yeah, and I might add, you have a lot of time.
Yeah, that's like behind this all is a calculus that there's a calculus that it takes a lot of effort, at least on your own part. Maybe you need to expend effort or money to get an expert lawyer, but like to get a claim into the legal system has up to now been a pretty effortful, burdensome thing. And now all of a sudden it's not. So like,
well, maybe, and I'll just like want to leave open the possibility that it's been too burdensome.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I personally, speaking for myself, wouldn't want to file anything with a court without a lawyer. Right. So it's a daunting task, and I'm highly educated, it's maybe too daunting, but ChatGPT is making it maybe too easy. So it's like, how do we naturally find the like happy, like medium, And,
arguably ChatGPT isn't even benefiting them if it's giving them junk law, junk citations, angering the court. It it may not be providing the access that it purports to be providing.
Yeah, and to that point, Tom, I mean, I evaluate AI all day, and really question the some of these high level claims that are made about, oh, AI will increase access to justice and AI will increase, your ability to get medical care or, X, Y, and Z. And I really question those things. And I'm highly skeptical of claims like that because of situations like this, where, AI is being used and it's not producing high quality outputs, but people feel like it is because it sounds like it's a lawyer. It sounds like it's a doctor. And that's really, I think, where I am most concerned and really want to focus on those sort of claims about AI as a universal good because of things like the increasing access to justice.
Sam, thank you for bringing the AI skeptic back into the conversation. Like, I feel like there's like a multi-layered cake here. Like at the top, we have like lawyers doing their job well on both sides of a certain case. And the next level, we have like lawyers doing their job lazily using ChatGPT or some other AI. And like, Tom and Jake and I like enjoy sending each other, articles about, for example, there was a case recently I sent to both of them where the judge tossed out a case where both sides were using AI in an like indescribably stupid way. And the judge was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Right? Like you guys are both doing it. And then there's like this, this pro se thing where, at least with the judges, with the lawyers, you're like, you should know better than this. The judges can say that. But with the pro se folks, like, you don't know better than this. How are you going to proofread something that ChatGPT wrote? You're not a lawyer. You don't know how to proofread it. It's a complete black hole of like standards. There are no standards at this point.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before. Oh, sorry, Jake, but we've talked about this before, and you mentioned our reading group up at the top of it sounding very confident. And that's a design choice that the developers make of convincing you of, it's either going to hype you up or it's going to say, you're right. Or maybe it's going to say, I'm the ultimate authority. Trust me in everything I do. Right. So those are design choices too, that I think we should question, especially around these issues.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that something we talk about often in our algorithmic audit work is like, what's the definition of success and how important that question is. And one definition of success in a legal context for some kind of person, like the scammer, is getting it into court. Because when you get it into court, you've got the other person's attention. They've got a lot to lose now, potentially, at least time, maybe money, whatever. So getting it into court is one version of success. But actually making a successful legal argument that gets to a resolution that's in your favor is a different notion of success. And I think ChatGPT is almost definitely good at the first. It's good at creating things with legalese language and that have the sections that you need or whatever. Like they're good enough to get into the courts and gum it up, but they're not good enough to actually make a coherent legal argument or that's going to win. And there's also the fact that some other learned lawyer has mentioned before, where it's like such a tiny fraction of legal issues become a trial with a jury or even go in front of a judge, right? Most of them get sorted out as a settlement on the side because learned people are like negotiating over the real issues. It's not a question of that it's a brief in the right format or something. It's like people really discussing what's at issue. So I wonder if there's just like a definitions of success thing here. I mean, that's not a solution, but it's just how can we separate the template notion of success where it's like you need to hand in these documents and then it becomes a court case and then everybody's got a headache on their hands versus like there's actually any merit in there.
Well, Jake, I really appreciate your trying to actually answer the question rather than just complaining about the issue. And I'm not going to solve the problem, but I'm just going to say it kind of like reminds me of early internet things where we're like, oh, the internet information should be free. Email is amazing. And then like we had spam and then we developed spam filters. Thank God. Right. Not that we don't get spam, but like think about the alternative universe where we didn't have spam filters. I feel like the justice system needs spam filters. And, this has come up before. We talked to Shlomo Kapper like a few weeks ago about, his attempts to use AI to help judges, for judges to use AI, as I understood it. And that's maybe going to happen. But like the real point is that like the justice system needs to respond. And in the conversation I had with him, I was like, instead of using AI, let's have like way more judges. Let's just like supercharge the justice system because they need more resources. And you know what we shouldn't be shortchanging in these days that we're living through? The justice system. Like, I wouldn't mind paying a lot more for judges if they could like be paid to do the work until we figure out a better way of dealing with it overall,
Right. If this is actually a access to justice issue, then that seems like the right solution. Well, maybe 50% of these cases are junk, but if 50% of this increase is because now people can actually have, seek a legal solution for this issue that they had that wasn't being addressed, before, then that means you should have a bigger court system to handle it. Maybe, New York has a small claims court for fender benders and small item thefts and things like that. So maybe that's what needs to be established, is some sort of alternate route for pro se litigants in a way that, is fair to them, that doesn't deny them access to justice.
That'd be great.
I don't know if that'll ever happen.
You know what?
We'll put it
We're
on the
not
wish
just
list.
trying to solve all the problems with a bow on the top and a cherry. We're just suggesting, like, AI is actually changing our world, and what we want to do is preserve the good of our world while like acknowledging the changes. Like, we're not suggesting that like we can just close our eyes and things will go away. That's just not true. Sam, what is your? Yeah, I was just wondering, Sam, if your husband has a theory about this, since he's a lawyer.
He has a theory. Yeah, I mean, he's got friends who are in family law, and they're seeing a lot of this, and they don't have a good solution. And I think, one thing would be donate to your local legal aid society. Like, those people need all of the resources they can get. You can't rely on pro bono for everything. There's, you have these societies out there who can help. So definitely, I think that would be my takeaway from this conversation, is make that a priority. That's a great idea. This is something you care about. Yeah.
A couple of recent episodes, which I think have not yet been released. We've been talking with a couple of lawyers from a legal aid group in Washington State, and they are echoing just what you're saying. I mean, they're overloaded with cases. I don't think that's anything new, but the existence of AI tools is a pressure on them. It's a temptation, a way to get, not in a bad way necessarily, but like maybe a way to really power through a lot of their caseload and get to the most useful stuff that they can spend their time on. But if it's going to make mistakes along the way, how should they deal with that? So it's an issue that they're grappling with actively as well, and they need more resources.
Yeah,
one
absolutely.
thing I was going to point out in that white paper that I sent around was that the number of represented cases stayed flat during this time of explosion in the pro se cases, which would suggest that lawyers aren't being displaced by AI legal filings, which is just sort of an interesting addition to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, in the legal tech space for the last 3 years, the line has been lawyers aren't going to be replaced by AI, but lawyers will be replaced. Lawyers who don't use AI will be replaced by lawyers who do use AI.
There's a threat.
But they have to use AI
Mhm.
within the ethical limits.
Yes.
That's a
Exactly.
very important issue.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I mean, boy, puts the target on their back with their filings. Like lawyers have to, verify that the information that they submitted is true and accurate in a way that a pro se litigant does not currently have to do. And so if you use it, you risk being disbarred if it's bad and you haven't checked. It's always a risk for litigators that you'll do something that runs afoul of the system, but this is just another way that could happen.
Sam, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. It's really
Thank you for having me.
conversation. I hope you come back and also tell
Me
us
too.
how that worked out. Everybody, thank you for listening to AI Skeptics, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
See you next time, skeptics.
Thanks for having me.